Not putting them in all the little league sports and all that. It's like, yeah, right? Pretty soon you'll be late. Good to see you too.
Yeah, it's funny. I caught Kristen. I was at the firehouse a couple times ago.
Well, because you usually talk to the paralegals and that because, yeah,
Yeah,
they're the ones that do all the orders.
That we had with Chris at one point, it's always been with you and maybe Jessica and Roland. But we're doing, yeah, and I think I emailed Jessica about that.
Perfect.
We have a lot of wood.
I can eat the fish. I catch it.
We'll wind down Wednesday. It's
That's good.
That's right.
Okay. Good evening. We're going to convene the City of Walker Planning Commission. First item on the agenda, after calling to order, is a review of the meeting minutes. We've got meeting minutes from March 6th and March 20. Any comments, questions concerning those? Got one, my exchange on the 24 minutes. Bottom of page 8 says Scott Funky agreed, and I agreed. Okay, very good. Any other comments? All those in favor of approving, do we need a motion? Yeah.
I make a motion to approve both sets of minutes.
Second. Okay. Motion by Tyler, supported by Joe to approve the both sets of minutes with that notation. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. This is an opportunity for general public comment. Generally, it's something not necessarily on the agenda, but this is an opportunity to come forward and share your thoughts. 3-minute time period to do so. No takers, we'll move on. First, next item is case number 24-005, final site plan review. Paula Prevey, the planning director, would you please introduce the project?
Thank you, Chair. I'd be happy to. Let's start here, actually, at the bottom of my report, give some orientation to where we're talking about in the city. So the project in question is 1920 Northridge Drive. It's on the south side of Northridge Drive between Walker and Bristol. This is a copy of an excerpt from our zoning map. The property is zoned IPUD. And this is an excerpt from the master plan community character map. It is designated enterprise, which is one of our industrial categories. An aerial image, this is from Google Earth actually, kind of the current conditions on the site and what it looks like from the road today. So then I will jump us over here to the plan set. This property is part of the Walker View PUD, originally approved in 2015. I believe it's original lots I, 6, 7, and 8, having been combined into the lot we're discussing tonight. And this is the proposed site plan. It is brought by Falk Real Estate LLC, associated with Falk Panel, you may be familiar with, attended in our industrial area today. It's a proposal for a 195,000 square foot multi-tenant industrial building along truck docks, parking, landscaping, utilities, and other site improvements. The plans identify 166 parking spaces, including 5 ADA spaces and 23 truck or trailer spaces. The applicant came to the staff site plan review committee on March 14th and was provided feedback. According to my review, the plan set addresses all of the staff comments and concerns, and the plans meet the Walker zoning ordinance regulations as to use setbacks, conformity with the approved PASP, parking, loading, landscaping, lighting, kind of all of the things I would look for and give you comments on, I found in the plan. So I don't have a ton of comments for you. The one note is that this is part of a PUD, so PUD benefits are usually something we discuss, and none were proposed as part of the site plan. So it's kind of a straight in line with the ordinance project as far as my review goes. And I'm happy to pull up any of the images again, zoom in around the site plan. I also have to show you the renderings that were provided by the applicant as to what the building is proposed to look like. And I'm happy to answer any questions that the board may have at this time.
Thank you, Paula. Board members, any questions, comments? Okay, thank you. And we'll turn to Scott Connors, city engineer.
Thank you. The first item in our memo, I'm not sure if it's still valid or not. I almost feel like I missed a dimension in there because Paula didn't get that. But the nose-to-nose dimension for private parking is supposed to be 61 feet. We can certainly clear that up at staff level if I've missed a dimension in there. The western driveway is shown with radii that are a little bit larger than we typically allow. Our standard is for 30-foot radius. That's actually increased from what used to be 20 feet about 10 years ago. But we want to make sure that we're not allowing those to be too big in too many places because it makes the driveway enormous. There is a 30-foot radius around the south part of the building, which leads us to believe that the vehicles that are going to be using the site should be able to navigate that driveway. In order to consider anything larger than the standard, we would need to get truck turning templates, and then that would have to be reviewed by the DPW director and myself for a staff variance. So as far as moving forward tonight, you should probably consider those to be 30 feet. And if there's a compelling case, we'll deal with that later. And then last item, there's a retaining wall around the southeastern part of the site that's pretty substantial. It's as high as 20 feet. Typically what we would require here is that the formal design for that retaining wall comes in with a PE seal on it. It's typically going to be a structural engineer. It's not going to be a normal civil, although it could be. But we want to make sure that that comes in and is given to the building official prior to any work on the building permit itself. So we want to make sure that there's a safe way to retain that south part of the site before they start putting a building 20 foot higher and immediately adjacent to that. So that's a pretty important item. And they may also require, the building official may also require fall protection around that wall. That makes an awful lot of sense, but we defer that to the building official. That's it.
Okay, thanks, Scott. Any questions for Scott at this point? Okay, we'll turn it over to the applicant. If you come, representative of the group would come forward and give us your name and address.
Maybe I don't need it at all, but my name is Boudewijn Hazen, one of the owners of Falk Panel. We're from the Netherlands. The 4 owners are from the Netherlands. So you see also, I'm here 4.5 years now. I love the area where we're in. We love the support that we get from the city. We want to maintain in Walker. We want to keep growing in Walker because, like I said, we're growing our company from, let's say, 4 years ago, starting with 1 or 2. We're now almost to 50, and we're even looking at boosting that further. We're working on certification on our current panels to. And then we're looking at a second shift and potentially a third shift. That's not all in this plan, but that's just a little background story here. This is between us and the hotel. We looked at that and there were different applicants before us. And we thought it is a missed opportunity if we cannot get some prime real estate and develop that nicely, you know. So around us, there is not much available that we can use to our benefits. We have a pretty steep growth agenda in front of us, and we believe that this would support our growth for us in the later future. So we don't know yet what we want to do with the building, so it is considered a little bit as a spec building for now, but definitely with the strategic agenda that we have in front of us, will potentially move jobs and create jobs in that area. So I would like to express my support in the name of the 4 owners. Thanks for the support that we have been getting so far for this. And yeah, that's also why you saw maybe a little bit different rendering than what we were used to see in the area here. But that is because we had an engineer from the Netherlands working on this and helping us. That's also what we did originally on our own building. So and we have also some plans for that, but that is in a month or so. You will see me here again for some expansion plans there. But this is, yeah, we thought to, I think this is also nice for the city of Walker to see this instead of the previous plans that were submitted, as far as I know. So, yeah, I think it is a win-win for all of us. So, again, thanks for the support.
Thank you.
You want to speak to this, maybe?
Yeah.
Good evening. My name is Alexander DePoy of Moore and Rujek. I am filling in for Justin Longstreth this evening, given that he is also on spring break, just like so many others right now. The first comment under the city engineer's review, particularly regarding the 61 feet nose to nose for private parking, is there an opportunity to have that reduced to what we currently have on the plans as a PUD benefit? Currently, we have 24-foot drive aisles and 18-foot spaces.
Scott?
I don't know. I think it's in the zoning ordinance, so I defer to Paula.
And yes, I apologize, Scott did catch that, and I did add it to my report. It was already in his. It's, at this point, it is up to the board. The standard is in the zoning ordinance. However, as a PUD, the planning commission has the ability to be flexible on things within PUD benefits.
Okay. And in that parking area, you're generally expecting to have passenger vehicles?
That is correct. I believe visitors of the building, as well as just general employees, will be using the eastern drive cut to enter the site. Primarily, truck traffic will be entering through the west.
Okay. There was another, so any comments as far as that particular aspect of this, as far as?
What's the variance, a foot?
Yes, it'll be reduced from 61 feet to 60. Yeah, it would be widening I believe there are 5 drive aisles by 1 foot to 25 feet wide from 24.
I don't see a problem with that, but I'm not an engineer, so.
Yeah, I'm acquainted with another community that has similar requirements, and 24-foot drive aisle works for a two-way movement in that part of the site where the employee parking is, visitor parking. And in terms of the driveway, the radii for that, what is the reasoning for that? And you've heard what Scott has described?
Mm-hmm. I believe it may have been a holdover before we actually had the present design for the walkway. Actually, as you can see, it actually doesn't quite line up with the, it doesn't actually end up being flush with the walkway as it is currently. I believe it was just a holdover from a previous design of the site. I don't believe that there was an actual design purpose behind 50 feet. I believe having it reduced to 30 would be entirely possible.
Well, I guess that aspect of it was suggested by the city engineer that we consider leaving that detail to be worked out as part of the building permit process. And that seems like a reasonable way to address that. Then about the retaining wall, can you kind of give some rationale there and any reaction to the comments from the city engineer?
I do understand your concern, especially with the height of the wall. I think it's one of the largest that I've worked on personally during my time in this position. The biggest hurdle that we had in terms of designing the site was the slope from the northeast to the southwest. We had the exact same issue in the previous iteration of this site when it was meant to be a truck storage parking lot. Just the sheer amount of drop from one end to the other, especially with a building this time, necessitates a little bit more fill, especially in that southeast southern edge of the actual site. Justin and I, our process moving forward would be to contract out the design of the wall, probably to one of the geotechnical firms in the area. I believe he mentioned Soils and Structures. He was going to be reaching out to actually do the design work. But as far as a rationale behind the amount of fill on site, it's mostly due to the large building footprint as well as runoff.
Maybe I can jump in. As Justin and I did talk beforehand about this, and he fully agrees that we'll have it sealed by PE. I think the part of our note that's critical is to make sure that's done before the building official issues a permit. So it's not really part of the site stuff. We just want to make sure that the building doesn't get started before the support structure is in place for that.
Makes sense.
Are you bringing Bill in then?
I was just gonna ask that. There's a 40-foot drop, there's a 40-foot drop off, are you bringing Phil in?
Bodman was just whispering something to me. Zach Falk with Moore and Brewing. He used to say, what if we were to maybe take that triangle off the front of the building, make it flat, slide that whole building a little bit north. Obviously that retaining wall is going to be expensive. I think the reality of that is maybe setting in now. So if we were to shape a triangle off the front of that building and slide it a little bit to the north, is that something we could play around with and work with staff on? The elevations would look much the same, which are beautiful, but just the shape of the building. This just came up, so just throwing it out there as an idea. Because of the concerns with that retaining wall, we also have concerns with that retaining wall. Like Alex said, yeah, we'd have a structural engineer for sure design that. We're not going to do that at Moore Bridging. Well, just something to throw out there. If that was something we could consider. We'd still like approval, but we'd like to have that opportunity to possibly look at that cost reduction by changing the shape of the building a little bit.
Well, that's a case where I think that you'd be able to work with staff on that. And probably even by moving it, I'm presuming that there'd still be some degree of retaining wall there, perhaps not as massive as perhaps this is.
I don't think we're not going to get rid of the entire retaining wall, but if we can move it, the building 10 feet north and go from a 20-foot tall wall to a 10-foot tall wall, it feels a whole lot better.
Well, my opinion on it is that could change a lot of things on the layout, and you have to have a whole new site plan review.
From the technical standpoint of all the details, I'd rather see you just approve what you have in front of you and have them come back and ask for an administrative change to make an adjustment. That way you're reviewing something you've seen, you've got reports on it,
Yeah.
you're comfortable.
We'd like that as well.
There's a lot of technical things here, right?
We'd like that as well because this idea just kind of came up, so
Right.
we don't know if it's going to happen. I just wanted to throw that out there and see what your reaction was to that. So.
Well, back to the question, are you bringing a lot of fill-in, or?
From what I understand, the site, there would be quite a bit of fill brought in, but there's also a significant amount of cut on the northern end of the site.
Yeah.
Whether it ends up
It's
being,
mounted.
whether it be suitable or not, I guess is yet to be determined. It seems like it should be, given the soil borings that we've had in the area, but I presume so, yes. We'll have quite a bit of fill brought in.
Any other comments, questions?
Just a quick question. The current Falk site has a lot of outside storage. This doesn't show any. Is that still the case? No outside storage on this particular piece versus what you're doing on the other one? Because there's a lot of stuff sitting outside on that one, which was approved, but I just want to make sure.
Yeah. From what I understand, no outdoor storage actually has been planned.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Correct.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Is there anyone in the public that wanted to ask questions about this? Looks like most of the home team over here, so, all right, see none. It's your pleasure.
Well, this is, to me, this is a big deal. This is 4 acres, 166 spaces. The renderings, we've seen the pictures, is that what the building's gonna look like, or that just, okay, that's an impressive building, and 4 acres, this is a big deal. And I sounds like, well, this slope is the problem, I think they're gonna work on it. This guy on my right, I pat him on the back, but we believe in this guy, and he's been around for a long time, so we gotta kind of go by what he says.
But that means to be old, so.
You beat me to it. Okay, I'll make a motion. Case number 24-05, 1920 Northridge Drive, Northwest Industrial Building. Based on the application material provided, I make a motion to approve the 5 mile area site plan for the new 195,000 square foot industrial building and associated site improvements at 1920 Northridge Drive, Northwest, subject to the following conditions and based on the findings of fact noted below. The applicant shall address all items outlined in the city engineer's report dated March 27, 2024, noting that the parking aisles have been reduced by 1 foot. Number 2, the applicant shall provide 3 sets of sealed civil engineer plans incorporating the recommended conditions to the community development department prior to the issuance of the building or stormwater permits. Findings of fact per section 1102 G5. The PUD as described by the final area site plan dated 3/20/24 does continue to meet the standard contained in the preliminary site plan requirements. The final area site plan is in substantial compliance with the previously approved preliminary site plan consisting of maps and accompanying written material. The applicant has made provisions satisfactory to the planning commission that open space areas on the plan have been the applicant has made provisions satisfactory to the planning commission that open space areas on the plan have been irrevocably committed for that purpose, and that maintenance plans are in place for those areas. The PUD does comply with the uses permitted by the IPUD district and the uses approved within the related PSD.
Motion by Tyler, is there
Support.
support by Pat? Any discussion? There being none, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same. Motion passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Well, at this point, we're going to have a work session of sorts with regard to the master plan, so board members will go down tables below
Remember the parking lot we approved for that area?
Yeah, okay.
Way better.
Yes. Much.
But it is water, so.
Okay.
We're gonna put out here.
Don't pay attention. Let's go.
That's right, Rory.
Let's go and catch up. Jen, I gotta get these two.
Somewhat of a hopper.
Yeah.
Yeah, zoning quickly, and then, yeah, Gary did mention there's a spot open. You know, my mom here, Tina.
Yeah, that's your mom?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Great lady.
Just on the phone with us afternoon. Good, board members. That's good. School year.
Just the screen.
That's you guys went to school.
Showing the wrong thing.
I mean, turn it.
Yeah, if you would, thank you.
Sorry.
Church sermons.
Well, we were in town, I left early January, California, came back, started Monday, so I got here and be back.
Okay.
But yeah, it must have been roll around St. Mary's and time.
Yep.
How's the new restart? Remember that after IU took off?
Yeah, he's good guy. Soft spoken, but I think he takes the approach similar to Father Mark.
All right,
Yeah, there's a lot of changes here in the Northwest.
all right.
Okay, this way.
My apologies, we only have the one screen that I'm able to get working, so you'll actually, I recommend focusing toward the screen for the remainder of our meeting tonight. So I put a few things on the table for the board. There are copies of the report from our planning consultant, Chris Corey with McKenna, who's working with us on this project, as well as copies of one of the maps we'll discuss later, and 2 full hard copies of the draft updated book 1. I'll get into all that, I just wanted to have them available for the board, and then since we're not up at the dais mics, there is the one mic there. If you have questions or comments, please try to have it in the vicinity to make sure the recording captures any discussion that happens. So,
It's on?
not right now, it's probably okay for now. So the presentation I've got, just as a quick overview, there's a lot of text in here to make sure if people were just looking at it in the packet, they could pretty closely follow along. I wouldn't worry too much about reading all of the details. First, the Walker Master Plan, just a little bit of a 101, is that our current master plan, the 2020 master plan, many of you were involved in that process, took place from spring 2019 through fall 2020, so it was a bit of a turbulent time, but the work still got done. That draft, or that plan was adopted by the City Commission in September of 2020. That's what the cover looks like. I have a hard copy of all of it on the table over there if anyone wanted to look at it, but the important thing is that it's actually broken out into a number of different books. So book 1 is the overall vision, high-level policy, and then there are 4 neighborhood cluster books that look at different aspects of the city: Alpine Bristol neighborhood, South Walker, Standale, and Northwest. Then there is a short summary, kind of looking all the way into the past at all of the master plans and the history of the city of Walker, and then a little bit of a deeper dive into the more recent past of from the 1998 master plan through the different sub-area plans from then on. So we're going into some amendments at this time because of the moratorium. As part of that process, the city committed to some work regarding the master plan. We have worked a little bit previously on the West Standale redevelopment plan area. We'll continue that work at the next planning commission meeting. But for tonight, I want to make sure we walk through some of the other sections that are part of the amendment process. They're all related to housing. There are some we're calling them phase 2 amendments that we'll hopefully get into later in this calendar year. But for the time being, we're focusing pretty narrowly in on the housing components to make sure we can get them done before the moratorium deadline on May 5th. So our topics for tonight are that bulleted list there: net density, gentle density target areas, transit-oriented development, RPUD 3, and significant undeveloped lots. Many of these components are already in the zoning ordinance as has already been adopted, and we're kind of making sure the 2 documents work together. So we'll start with net density. Again, this is, now we're getting into kind of a walkthrough of the the memo that Chris put together. So if you want to follow along, there'll be a lot of words on the screen, but you also have them in front of you. So each one of these sections starts with where it will go in the book. So the next slide will have the text, and we will discuss it, but this is where the new language will fit into the existing book. So there's two printed out copies of book 1. Those are the draft as amended. This is the text for net density. Again, I know there's a ton of words up on that slide. That's what would go in there. Our current master plan talks about gross density, as well as net density and practical density. As part of the zoning ordinance update process, we chose to narrow that to really just focus on net density. So now that's the only one that's in the zoning ordinance, and we're making sure that the master plan only has net density as well. There's some policy things in here that have already kind of been worked out. The purpose and intent of net density, as it says on the screen there, is to accurately determine the actual carrying capacity of a given parcel by removing site features that are difficult or impossible to develop. This ensures that the character of the development is consistent with the intent, purpose of the zoning districts in the city, rather than protected land being used to create out-of-scale developments. So a summary of that being added to the plan with this proposed amendment is that last paragraph. Walker considers natural features preservation to be an expectation of every new development in the city, not a special design feature to be rewarded. Therefore, all references in this plan to density are net density. Trying to clarify that, there's been some confusion about this with the different ones and what you use when. So this is the kind of the policy direction that underlies what's already in the zoning ordinance because it's already been decided. But this is a time for discussion if some of this sounds new. And again, if you wanted to find the reference in the zoning ordinance, it's already in there on page 111.
Try to use the mic.
Oh, thank you, Tom.
Was the 20% grade in there originally then?
Yeah, that was discussed as part of the zoning ordinance process, and it had been a slightly different number. I think it was 15 before, and it got adjusted. There's some discussion about that at more of the engineering level.
I think I remember that. That's a while ago, though.
Yes.
Okay.
But the overall policy here is that in some places you'll find that net density is used. If you can't develop part of it, you still get that number, like the greater number of units, and you just make them more dense on one portion of the site that's easier to develop. And that's not really the policy going forward that Walker has, it's not really been the policy historically. Now it's being codified more concretely in our current zoning ordinance, and we're making sure that they align. And so this is the policy statement version of that. Does that sound accurate to the discussions that have been had around the planning commission table?
I think so, but it does have, I guess it has a potential of, it's a very conservative approach to it.
Yes.
Somebody with a large piece of property isn't necessarily going to get have an opportunity to get as many units on the property as they perhaps would have previously, because there were other ways to compute that. But for clarity, it's probably good to have something that's solid, no matter what property you're looking at. I think there's other aspects of the other parts of this that maybe compensate for that a little bit in terms of other directions that the city might be taking here.
Is there overlap with the concept of the cluster development, the cluster site?
Somewhat. This replaces some of that. The section in the master plan previously that talked about clustering and density calculations is some of that we'll see later in the presentation, later in the memo, is being removed because it contradicts some of the net density information that's in here now. Because of that policy direction of rather than, it helps that like creating out of scale developments is kind of the key there at the end of that third paragraph. If you can't develop half of a site because of wetlands, and then you get a really dense development on the other half that doesn't fit with the surrounding, maybe perhaps existing or future development. Kind of creating that neighborhood character consistently within the different areas, rather than the development character kind of increasing dramatically if there's a site that, and in that example, is half wetlands.
Thank you.
I don't think I need the microphone, but I've got 29 acres off Collindale that probably 10 acres is unbuildable. And I was told that's an asset because it's green stuff, but you're saying that doesn't count anymore. Is that what I'm hearing?
Toward the net density, that is the policy direction that this is saying, yes. That it's an asset to any future development, but it wouldn't give like increased benefit to the remainder of the parcel.
And who's going to determine, I mean, how much you build on the side of the hill or not? I mean, I can see where that's negotiable a little bit.
Within a PUD, for example, some of that is flexible.
Okay.
That was gonna be my question. Who determines the body of water or the body that cannot be built on? Is it Eagle? Is it City Walker? Is it the developer that says, here you got this pond, but do you go like 3 feet beyond the pond? Do you?
When do you measure it? When do you measure it too?
Your storm size, or you just do, a real dried out summer size? I mean, I'm just curious as to who determines the net density that you can't take? Is that laid out in here at all?
It's an excellent question. It's laid out in a little more detail in the zoning ordinance, but it's also part of that happens in the development review process. So as part of what's currently in the zoning ordinance, those numbers of wetlands and water bodies and slopes, for example, would need to be provided by the applicant and their engineering team with the application as part of the numbers. And if there were questions or concerns, they seem really out of scale, they're way too high or way too low, the anticipation is that those items would be caught through the site plan review, the planning commission review, the building official review, all of those kind of procedural steps that happen. And if there is confusion or concern, that would be addressed and negotiated in one of these meetings.
Yeah, you got to remember it's not a PUD, which gives us some flexibility. It's not a platted lot. If they plat it, you're stuck with what you got, so they have to be extremely precise in a precise platted plot. So we got a little bit of flexibility. I like this because it prevents a developer from buying a lot next to him that's just a swamp to increase his acreage so he can shut more buildings on one lot. Okay. So I like it. And this is old. We've talked about this. I don't know if it was 6 months ago, a year ago. I have no idea.
Yeah. This is already codified in the zoning ordinance. But we're bringing it back, and the language is a little, perhaps might be new, especially that last statement, which is the policy version of what the code already says.
Yeah, we don't want to like overly prescribe, because then you create that hard rule and then you can sort of work around it. I think you want to create a situation where questions are raised and then they need to be addressed and answered, in that, not that it's a gray area, but if you spell everything out, it causes almost more trouble sometimes.
Yeah, and this goes hand in glove with other sections of our master plan that talk about in the future land use map, the community character maps, there's the density ranges, and we'll get into a little bit of that later. Or the future land use map says this area that currently is vacant might be proposed for residential growth at 2 to 4 units per acre. There's flexibility within that, but when you do the math, you take out the wetlands to get to that 2 to 4 range when you're doing that. All right, pending other questions, and we can circle back to any of these, but some of them do link together, so I'll keep going and we can come back if that makes sense. The next section is gentle density target areas. This is perhaps the most new section within the whole memo that you have in front of you. This is where it will be added, mostly in Book 1. However, it's also going to be appended to the residential growth 2 to 4 units per acre in the 4 neighborhood books, so that if you go just to one of those, it's there too. So again, lots of text. The idea behind gentle density is when the lots are of the appropriate size and there's currently infrastructure in place to permit more duplexes. There's already lots large enough. Our zoning ordinance has 3 or 4 single-family zoning districts with some slight variation between them, AA, AS, and SA. Then there's the A2 district, which is really permits single-family homes and duplexes. Duplexes require, that whole district has slightly larger regulations, dimensional regulations. So it's 1,300 square feet instead of 11,880 for a single family. So the density for that district is about 3.3 units per acre. So there's a map that's the one on the table there, if you wanted to hand those out. That map identifies parts of the city zoned for single family, where A2, the A2 district, would make sense, and allowing duplexes would make sense within the community. So those are designated within the map as gentle density target areas. And then the policy statement here is that the intent of this plan, it is the intent of this plan that requests to rezone to A2 within the designated areas on the map be considered consistent with the master plan. And that language sounds familiar because we look at that all the time. Is this project that's coming for rezoning consistent with the master plan? It's one of the main characteristics we look for in making a recommendation to rezone. This is saying if it fits in that map and they want to go to A2 to do duplexes, it is consistent. So within those areas, the map is created by identifying vacant lots between 1,300 square feet and 2 acres in areas well located for duplexes. And then there's a note here, the plan envisions the city proactively rezoning some or all of those lots to A2 to promote gentle density and increase housing without altering neighborhood character. So those are identified as the priority rezoning parcel. So I'm going to get into that. There's 3 maps here that were slightly updated.
I guess one comment on that. A plus that I see associated with that is that oftentimes if you've got an area, and in this case it's all zoned single-family residential, and somebody comes in and wants to put a duplex, the term spot zoning has been used a lot. And for that reason, it doesn't happen in a lot of cases. This really is a very overt policy by the city indicating that in now those circumstances, that can be possible to be undertaken. So.
Yeah, but it comes with a caveat that the lot's bigger too. So they lose a little bit of it because the lot is 2,000 or 3,000 square foot bigger. I do agree with you though, that's an interesting thought.
I think we're all familiar with the housing pressure that the whole region is under, the need for more housing. One way to permit more housing without dramatically changing the character of our neighborhoods is to allow more duplexes. The A2 district still allows single family, so you'll probably get a mix of single family and duplex development. There's a few examples that come to mind that are in existence within the last 5 to 10 years. So there's a few new ones on Remembrance, kind of between the Leonard area and City Hall on the northeast side. There's several around Richmond when you turn off Remembrance on the curve there. And then that neighborhood, that kind of Kinrow neighborhood to the north there is A2 and is a mix of single family and duplex developments. If you didn't know there were duplexes in there, you wouldn't know there are duplexes in there. They look like large single family homes. But the zoning has to be in place. The master plan has to allow for that, for those type of developments to move forward. And so the goal, that's the intent behind this, is to hopefully allow more of that where it makes sense. So that's what this map is. It's kind of trying to identify where there's those slightly larger lots and the infrastructure. There must be water and sewer, must be on a relatively large road or near a larger road. So you'll notice, this is a zoomed in version of the map that's up on the screen. Really not a lot in South Walker for duplexes because they don't have the public infrastructure already in place to support that higher density.
Could you get us some pictures of what they look like?
Yeah.
These duplexes, what they, yeah, or maybe tell me where I can go and look at them.
Absolutely, I can definitely send some of that out, but I can
Just go down
also,
to Remembrance here, and on the left,
Yeah. By the
when you get by towards Richmond, on the left down there, there's several of them.
Okay,
They're not bad looking.
okay.
And the spot zoning, getting back to that, one of the issues we had with spot zoning was we had residential, and then they want to go high density residential right next to it. This is not high density residential, so that's better.
We've talked about duplexes like here and maybe over there and maybe another one over there sprinkled in. That's kind of fine, but when I see this big block of duplexes in my mind, I'm like, big no.
Well, one of the things, one of the restrictions is that it goes up to no more than a 2-acre site. So it's,
Can limit the quantity of duplexes in a cluster or something?
it looks like it. In terms of, it says lots between 13,000 square feet and 2 acres. So that would imply that if it's over 2 acres, it won't be applied in the same fashion. Maybe that lends itself to sprinkling them in rather than having them concentrated.
I guess I've never seen 2 or more duplexes add something to a neighborhood.
Well, supposing your kids want to live next to you, and they can't afford a house like you have.
That's true.
Typically, a duplex is owned by somebody who rents it out to 2 families in a lot of cases. They don't actually live there. From what I've seen, I know a lot of people who own duplexes and they rent them out.
Sure.
you also do see a good number of people who will own a duplex, live in one side and rent out the other side. I do hear stories about people.
Or is it those condos? I mean,
Buying a
sometimes it's the-
duplex as well, to bring I'm treating the other side almost like a mother-in-law suite, having their parents age in place but still have more independence than having them in your home. Those sort of things are also becoming more and more common. But duplexes are still quite hard to build. In Michigan, there's not, in our area, there's not a lot of zoning that allows them. There's, I think, 6 districts in our zoning code which account for most of the residential that allow single-family homes, and duplexes are only allowed in 1 or 2. So they're still quite hard to do. This map is saying if people wanted to do duplexes and came to the board for a rezoning, and it was in one of these marked yellow areas, and this map is a draft. We can discuss it in detail and make changes to it. If there's areas where duplexes don't make sense, you can strike them from the map. The 13,000 square feet to 2 acres, where it's on a road with the water and sewer, is a starting place for a conversation about this idea. But you've got, if someone came in these areas, it would be, so that's not all of the yellow. It's the areas outlined in orange are the ones where if it came to the board, it would be considered in line with the master plan. It would still have to meet any of the other criteria for rezoning, but this just would remove one potential hurdle. And then it was noted in there, if the board, the city commission, decision makers the city wanted to take a more proactive step toward permitting duplexes, a future action step would be to consider proactively rezoning some of those areas that are marked in the red outline, the priority rezoning parcels, to A2. That's an idea. If it doesn't jive with kind of the sentiment around the table, that might be a step too far, or it might be something that could fit in the plan for now as a future action step, but that future, where we might consider that, is 10, 20 years down the road. But if someone chose to, the framework is already there. Not every action step gets taken in a plan of this nature.
13,000 square feet, just tell me what the size of that lot would be, how much frontage it have and stuff.
I mean,
Under a
the,
quarter acre.
Third
Huh?
of an acre.
Third, or over
It's
a
about
quarter
it's about a
acre.
third of an acre.
I mean, that isn't a huge lot.
No.
Maybe 100 foot
Standard-
wide,
standard
130.
Class A residential, isn't that 12,900 and something? Is that the minimum on?
the minimum Walker is 11,880 square feet,
Okay,
so
that's
it's
what I'm
slightly
thinking.
larger.
Almost 12,000.
Yep,
So, yeah, that's the minimum, at least for the subdivision I put in. Yeah, that was the minimum, yeah.
I can see, this is a, a direction probably ahead that we need to be more creative with how we do housing. I would, instead of going all in and just saying, where can we do this everywhere? I think I would pilot it in sort of a smaller cluster, see how it goes, and then expand it from there. I mean, like anything in life, if you can test it, why not? See what happens. Instead of doing the whole community all at once.
How much property is currently zoned A2 that would allow for this?
well, I intended to pull up the zoning map. If you have a moment, let me go around to the computer here.
These maps are much better than the ones that McKinney put out. This is, I can read these, you know? Those are good.
I didn't think duplexes were still a thing, actually. I thought
I
they
don't
were
know,
kind of
I'm
old
a
school.
little sensitive. I've worked in Kentwood for a long time, drove by them all the time.
There's a few scattered around, like we just said, all around here, but with all the condos, you get the condos, two of them side by side, or sometimes
Yeah.
three of them. That's the big thing. I just thought duplexes were a thing of the past, but.
Visser built some, I think Richmond near Remembrance.
Yep, there's some right there, actually right by his office. His office is right there.
And those, as duplexes go, I think are attractive and they look like they're a decent design. Sometimes I've seen some that you've got nothing but concrete in the front yard. And
Right.
You go a little bit further north of that in another visitor neighborhood, it's not as pleasant looking. And the thing that gets to what Tom's points are is when you scatter them amongst the neighborhoods, you tend to put a little bit of a stain on each neighborhood maybe, in some people's opinions. Maybe that's what Tom's getting. I'm not saying that is the case, but that may be what consideration is when you compile them into that one area like a Kentwood. It was just a free-for-all.
Yeah, if you're gonna stick it into a single-family neighborhood, what are the neighbors gonna think?
Well,
I'm just thinking for my
for
own,
longer hours.
yeah, I'm just thinking of my own neighborhood. I don't have any room in my neighborhood, but if I did have a lot, somebody said, I'm putting a duplex in there, it'd be kind of like, oh, no.
But the consideration for other areas, I think, would be to your point, Tom, are you suggesting that maybe a thought is peel it off one layer at a time instead of
Yeah,
machine gunning in
100%.
everything and seeing what the target looks like when you're
Yeah.
done?
There's gotta be more obvious targets.
Well, when you look at the duplexes and what the feasibility is in any kind of cost study on building a new property, whether it's multifamily, high density, low density, or single families, that's the challenge that builders are looking. So they're going to look other ways. They're going to look at Kentwoods and they're going to plow down a $30,000 beat down house and put up a duplex because that's how they're going to make the money if they're going to hold it or sell it for reinvestments. And the investors out there, from my perspective and from my experience, are all looking for duplexes because they can get 2 rents out of a building versus just the 1.
There's not, to the question about the zoning, where we currently have A2, there's not a ton around Walker. So I pulled up some of the most prominent ones, and then if you want, I'm happy to pull up Google Maps and kind of drive you through that neighborhood. So relatively new here, this is along Richmond, along the curve there from Remembrance. There's, I believe, 4 or 5 buildings, each a duplex along the curve there. This is Kinrow, and then this neighborhood back in here. Then south from 3 Mile, coming down through here. Oh, I forget the name of that road. But there's another area that part of the neighborhood allows duplexes and part of it does not. The same here. There's an area that allows duplexes, and then the northern section of that same neighborhood is single family. And if you're driving along there and you didn't know that these were duplexes, you probably wouldn't know. They look just like the rest of the neighborhood.
So you're talking that these areas in here would have to be rezoned.
They could be, if someone chose to bring in a rezoning request.
So it would be per plan that would come in and we'd have to recommend rezoning then, correct?
If someone chose to bring that forward,
So
or
we do
redevelopment.
have
or-
control over it. There is
Yes.
a control in place, not for what's already there,
Yeah.
but for the continued development of them. They can come in and say, yeah, I want to put 2 here and, you know, have how it fits into the neighborhood. Now, if they want to put 25, like
Yeah.
you said, I don't think we'd like that.
Well, I mean, there's a density sort of concept here which you can quantify, but part of this is a design
Yeah.
element, which, I don't know. There's a lot of cost pressure.
Oh, thank you for that.
Lower end, you know, the entry level houses, you can't build, you know, I mean, it's very expensive. So there is gonna be pressure to come up with things like duplexes. And then I know there's a project out in Lowell a couple of years ago.
Oh, the double garage, is that what that's the,
And they built them on slabs. And then they did prefab on slabs, you know, like they're trying to figure out a way to make these affordable. But
There's one right there.
it'll be.
Yeah, you got a single family on the east side, and on the west side, it's all duplex going up to the corner. And then on Kimmerl Court there, in the back of the cul-de-sac, there's some older ones, but
Yep, and sometimes they put those duplexes up against the power lines because nobody wants their house up against the power line, but a duplex at rent.
we got big yards there.
You gotta get out more, Joe.
Huh?
You gotta get out more, Joe. It's only like 10 miles from your house.
Yeah, come on. How big is Walker?
I know.
Well, I feel okay with it since we do have some power over whether we allow it or not.
Hey, thank you, that was very helpful.
And here are the qualifiers, again, 13,000 to 2 acres, so, so if you got a 6-acre site, you're gonna probably be expected to build a single family there. But, this, to me, sounds like it's, one of those vacant lots that's within an area. If it's of a sufficient size, you may be able to put a duplex in there as opposed to a single family.
Like a sand lot or something, type of thing.
Infill, I guess. Infill way to approach it.
So the yellow, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yellow, that whole block, I mean,
Maybe I can go over the legend here a little bit. So things marked in yellow are just calling out where the residential growth 2 to 4 units per acre is on our existing community character plan. So that's just pulling that out because that's the density that the duplexes would fall within because they're about just over 3 units per acre. So the yellow isn't everything would be considered consistent with the master plan. It would have to be within one of the orange bounded areas. So that takes out some of the areas. There's essentially a few neighborhoods. There's kind of 2 areas south of Remembrance, a neighborhood that's south of an existing A2 neighborhood. Kind of, it's an existing neighborhood where part of it's A2 and part of it's SA, I believe. So kind of allowing that existing duplex area to expand a little bit if there is redevelopment in that neighborhood. And then some of those areas between Lake Michigan and O'Brien. Along that's, I think, Cummings and Maynard.
Just to clarify, a duplex is considered one building, it's not 2?
It's 1 building with 2 units.
But it's so like you just said, you could put 3 of those on a 1 acre lot.
Yes, which would
Even though it'd be
oh,
6, even though it would be 6.
then I misspoke. No, the density there.
You said up to 3 per acre of a
if there's singular lots.
It equates to a density of 3.3 units per acre.
Right, and that's why I was just trying to confirm what a unit is from a duplex standpoint. The duplex is 1 unit, even though it has 2, no.
No.
Okay, all
One
right.
building, 2 units, I
Yeah.
think.
Okay, all right,
That,
just,
yes.
I just wanted to
Terry's
confirm
correct, I
that.
probably misspoke.
No, I just wanted to confirm that.
Yeah, that really limits it then, 3.3 per acre, that's not terrible at all.
Okay.
Okay.
Would it be helpful for the purposes of this map for me to bring it back to you without the yellow underline, but just calling out what's orange bounded and then pink? bounded? Because the yellow seems to be a bit of a confusion.
I could see where the orange line is. I think some of the areas are too big, I think.
So narrow the focus of where this would be consistent with the master
I think
plan.
we can do this in phases, couldn't we? I mean, if somebody really wanted to do something, can they ask for rezoning?
It would take that. So the proposal in the language here, this plan envisions, I'm reading here, this plan envisions the city proactively rezoning some or all of those lots to A2 within the pink bounded areas only, to promote gentle density and increase housing stock without altering neighborhood character. That perhaps is a bridge too far for the board at this time. Maybe just focusing on the orange for now is the right step. It would permit that if someone brought a rezoning request in, but it wouldn't go so far as encouraging the city to take that step proactively. Does that sound more in line with what you're discussing, Tom?
That's just my opinion. I'd rather crack the door open.
How does everybody else feel about the orange and the pink on there? Having some areas designated priority to be rezoned. If there was, again, a rezoning like that takes some significant political will, which may or may not be present at any given time, given the makeup of our commission.
Well, I like, that's where I live. But it gives you some flexibility, but yeah, we don't want 4 or 5 acres of that, do we? That's what we want to control a little bit, don't we?
Well, and I think that's why it goes from 13,000 up to 2 acres.
Yeah.
To maybe gradually introduce that.
Yeah, I think it would have to be a case-by-case basis, in my opinion. I don't mind putting it out there, but we're gonna have to keep a thumb on it.
It sounds like perhaps the language where this plan envisions the city proactively rezoning might be a step too far at this time, but
Well, I wouldn't just rezone anything. I would make them come in and have it rezoned. I would not rezone anything without a request.
Okay.
Or you look at it, you specify that, or make a point that the city does not have to do that anytime soon. So allow some development to take place that's consistent with that. It's already zoned A2. See how that works, and then eventually, perhaps there'd be proactive.
Maybe change some of that language. If the city wished to proactively rezone, the areas in marked priority are the recommended place to start. And then that's softer language, that there's still some areas that have been kind of vetted and identified, but if there's not the political will to go to that step, that's perfectly okay.
I like that. I mean, it only takes one bad builder, developer to kind of spoil the whole approach.
Sure.
I like being open-minded to the idea, but not to this extent.
Okay, that is very helpful feedback. Anything else on gentle density before we move on?
Yeah, one last question, and maybe I've missed it already. What was the determining factors for the priority rezoning parcels?
They were focused on neighborhoods that,
Characteristics, right?
yeah, where it seemed to fit within the existing neighborhood. There might be 1 or 2 duplexes already in that area that were perhaps allowed before the zoning change to prohibit them, or that the lots are of that larger size. There might be some vacant lots that currently have nothing where it would be a good fit. It's kind of a hodgepodge at this time.
So either way, we're going to have some speed bumps in the way we're looking at it, or we would be the speed bump in that sense for approving all of those, regardless of how many zones we had put together. And I'm just thinking a grander thought, not opposing what you're saying there too, but if the board has to convene in order to approve it, does reducing it and doing a test market make sense? Only in the sense that I think timeframes would be difficult to do a test market, given our current environment and the speed of things that need to happen. So if we're already in control of it, does it matter if it's the entire yellow map or if it's pieces of it or if it's just the priorities?
Anytime a rezoning request came in, it would come to the planning commission first for a recommendation and public hearing. Then it would go to the city commission for 2 readings. So any rezoning gets 3 public meetings before changing.
And it's notice to the neighbors, right?
Correct.
Yeah, so I mean,
500 foot.
you have a buffer, in my opinion.
So I think we're gonna find it anyway, if you try to put a duplex within 500 feet of anyone that's got a neighborhood that doesn't have any.
Right, and we're, point of Terry, we're not particularly easy on rezoning. There better be a reason, a really good reason.
Okay. No, that was an excellent question. Trying to keep us moving here. Get everybody out at a reasonable hour. Just quickly, the next section is transit-oriented development. It's adding some language into book 1 and appropriate places in other books. So this is focused on the few areas in Walker that have that 8 to 12 units per acre. There are very few of them. At this time, it's really just West Town. But that could change, but the hope is that the plan is stating that when you're near our well-designed, well-used transit line, the one we have, the Laker line, which is a bus rapid transit line, new development within a reasonable distance of those bus stops should focus on transit-oriented development, allowing greater density because of the benefit and the ease of access that those stops provide. So we already have the new RPUD3 district in our zoning ordinance. That has already been codified into the zoning ordinance, and it's the next section. So this is jumping ahead just a little, but it's laying the underlying policy foundation and framework for the RPUD3, which if you zoom out from the Walker-specific RPUD3, within the broader context, that's called transit-oriented development, allowing higher density specifically for housing near transit lines.
The only concern I have is Grand Valley, the Laker line, is located in Grand Rapids and Allendale. If anything happens to any one of those locations, this Laker line just kind of dies. If Grand Valley says, hey, we're going to go on the southeast side of Grand Rapids and get rid of Allendale campus. I'm just saying, stranger things have happened. We get rid of the Grand Rapids campus, we're just going to go Allendale, we're going to go further towards Lake Michigan. And that Laker line just dies. But I'm just saying, that's just, you never know. So we're relying a lot on that Laker line, putting a lot.
There's been a lot of very expensive infrastructure put in place for that Laker line as well. Kind of, I think goes both ways.
Yeah, no, I understand.
It is student-centric. I mean, I see the riders on the bus.
That's what we're targeting. We're targeting
Students and
housing by
employees.
those things is going to be, multi-level rentals for students. But anyway, I'm just kind of.
We've got that now with Maynard and Maynard Lake Michigan Drive. Yeah, we got that passed, recently, yes.
Yeah, that's the one I was against. This one bugged me. This one bugged me because it's more of spot zoning than anything in my timid little mind.
That one actually hasn't been approved yet. The planning commission made a recommendation. It got caught in the net of the moratorium, and they're waiting to come back in May when the moratorium ends. So that one is still
Joe and I have another chance.
Which is this? Where?
It's a project on the southwest corner of Lake Michigan and Maynard for about 24 units of multifamily housing. So
They're right behind the bus stop.
Yeah.
right behind the bus stop. Okay, so the next section is RPUD3. There's 2 amendments regarding RPUD3. This is the first one. It goes with the retrofit mixed use, and basically, like the last one that says RPUD3 is a good fit for transit-oriented development, this says RPUD3 is a good fit for retrofit mixed use developments. Those are our big box store areas. Think Green Ridge Square. If a few more businesses leave, and there might be development pressure for that to change and no longer be large, big box commercial development, but perhaps could be redeveloped into a neighborhood that is mixed with housing and commercial and services and other things. If that happens, this says RPUD3 is a good fit for those areas if they are redeveloped. Again, this is already in the zoning ordinance. It's now being placed into the master plan. The second piece of the RPUD3 amendment gets added in book 1 as part of the zoning plan section, which is at the end of the book. And this section specifically says RPUD3 is only allowed, as I just stated, when it's designated redevelopment mixed use or is within 500 feet of the platform of a Laker line station and must have public water and sewer. So the RPUD3 is the only way to exceed 8 units per acre outside of West Town, which is the only place in our community character map designated at 812. And the zoning plan there, that page that's on the screen, connects, it's a bridge between the community character map designations and our zoning districts, and it kind of says, where's the overlap? Each page within the different books has them laid out, but this is kind of an at a glance, and it needs to be amended because we have the new RPUD district that got added to make sure, again, that they go together. And as a reminder, these are already in our zoning ordinance, but they will now be added to the master plan. There are high standards if anyone wants to do that RPUD3. If anyone wants to do that higher density than Walker allows anywhere else, it has to meet these key policies and approval criteria of sidewalks on all roads, private and public and private, walking trails, maximum 6 stories. It's the only time you can go above 4 stories in Walker. You could potentially go up to 6, but if you do, the higher, that's the second to last bullet there, any of the higher 5th and 6th stories need to be set back, creating kind of a tiered terraced look at the top of the buildings to kind of dampen the look of that extra height, where the adjacent buildings will probably not also be 6 stories. Balconies are required, bicycle parking, slip streets for good access, and many amenities for residents. So this is a possibility if it's the right fit, but it comes with high standards. And these are some examples of what those could look like. And again, these are already in our zoning ordinance.
I remember talking about that it's kind of the trade-off for higher density.
Yes.
It's got to be a little better.
Yeah, there are high standards for any potential RPUD3 project. It's a kind of an agreement with the city. You get the benefit of more units per acre, but you must make sure they're of a high lasting quality. And the last section here is about significant undeveloped lots. There's a lot of changes to this because some of those lots are now being developed. And they're also spread throughout the book a little more than some of the other things we've talked about. So the gross practical and net density section that was discussed earlier lives in the significant undeveloped lot section of our current ordinance. Some of that's being removed because we're focusing on net density. English Hills and Lincoln Lawns both have approved plans. Those were some of our big significant undeveloped lots. Now that they're being developed, we're going to take them off the map. Net density again, and then identifying where some of those things live when we have more detailed plans within the book, like West Standale. We're going to make sure that there's a link to it in this section so that people can find it and know that there's a lot more information there. So here is that previous gross, practical, and net density section. We're taking it out. That section about clustering that you asked about earlier, Tom, is in this section, and it's up now contradictory to some of the net density stuff. There's still provisions and allowance, and we like cluster developments because they do keep that natural character of the land, which we love in Walker. But for clarity's sake, a lot of that had to do with practical density versus net density, and it's no longer relevant to the discussion. So those pages are being removed, and the significant undeveloped lots map is being updated.
When they came up with these, identifying these areas, you mentioned that English Hills, for example, is considered an SUL, and therefore it's going to be able to be developed as it's been planned. Got an overall PUD for that. But there's property immediately to the west of that, over to Bristol, that was taken into consideration. I think some of that is planned for commercial, but
Yeah,
is there going to be a need for commercial?
Northridge is supposed to continue through that to meet up with,
Cross Bristol?
Yes, and if you.
and that land just went up for sale. I don't know if you knew that.
It did. And it is still identified as a significant undeveloped lot on the map. It does have that precise platted Northridge Road that must come through. That's one where some of the net density stuff will come in because there are some steep slopes and some wet areas on that
So there's
land.
been nothing approved on that, so we have the power now to apply the new standards.
Yeah.
Or we have the power. The issue is whether the new standards will be applied on.
So that area, again, to the west of English Hills to Bristol is one of those SLU areas, SUL areas.
Yes, it is. So in the significant undeveloped lots section of the plan, the areas marked in blue here are the areas that are proposed to be changed. It's being amended, references are about net density, the map, and there's a table that for each of those significant undeveloped lots identifies the address, what it is on our future land use map, the parcel, how large that parcel is, and the approximate density allowed on that currently undeveloped lot.
Have you got copies of that? We could,
Yes, well, I just printed these two.
There's two of the
It's whole
copies.
thing.
She only made two of them because they're 100 pages long.
Yeah, they're about 140 pages, so I just printed two. But, so this table it includes all of the significant undeveloped lots, and it applies the community character, density, and the size of the lot to give an idea of how many units residential could be permitted if it were to be developed.
Well, just to be nosy, has there been interest in that Bristol lot?
At this time, I don't know that there has. When I met with the broker about a month ago, they were just asking real kind of preliminary questions about the history of the property and utilities, things the city might have planned, like the platted road that must go through.
That's the last section of Northridge. It'll continue, and then it's done.
Then it's done.
And then you and I can quit.
Not so Cabela's is built there.
That old plan?
No.
So
That'll finish it.
that's all of the sections in the memo and in the presentation. Happy to go back to anything if you want to. As a reminder, we're going to come back to the West Standdale redevelopment area at our next meeting. It's the only thing on that agenda. Once again, all of the other boards will be invited to participate. At that meeting, I have a presentation which will hopefully answer some of the questions Terry was asking for in our last meeting, doing some of a little bit in-depth historical overview. That area has been planned a number of times before, so we'll look back at the 1998 master plan. We'll look at the 2007 sub-area plan. We will look at the 2007 M11 Wilson Avenue access plan. So there's a lot of things in there, as well as the current conditions and the Vista 45 PASP. So we'll look at all of those, and then I'll hand it off to Chris, and he will go over some of the changes that have been made from the previous two meetings. We have a refined bubble diagram, that example development of kind of that essentials versus aspirations built out. What could that look like? And then do a little bit of a compare and contrast exercise between what in that document is in line with what the PASP already has, and where are the areas that might need more discussion because they're not completely in line with things the city has said they're interested in seeing and what's been recommended,
You should
what's
go back
been
and read
submitted.
everything about Vista 45, everything. Go back, watch all the meetings about Vista 45.
There's a few of them. and they're lengthy, but I'd be happy to send you kind of what those dates are and links if you're interested. So that's the plan for our next meeting. And then hopefully between our discussion tonight and our discussion on 4/17, at the May 3rd meeting, we hope to have kind of a compiled draft of this stuff and the West Standdale stuff to come to the board for the formal public hearing and recommendation. So then it's as substantively complete as it can be within our time frame before the moratorium ends. And it would still go to the city commission for the formal kind of vote, and then it goes through a lengthy comment and distribution period as a master plan before then it could be adopted and go into effect. But we're hoping to get kind of the meat of it all done before the moratorium ends in early May. So that's the way forward from here.
Did the Vista attorney ever provide his written comments?
I got some lengthy letters in the middle of last week, and they will be shared with the board before the next meeting. So at this time, we're reviewing everything, making sure that our presentations are all put together. They are aware of the meetings coming up, and we do have responses from them, not from the attorney, but from some other folks on that team.
Did he ask for additional data and measurements?
He did.
Quantify? Okay.
Well, this meeting was very helpful.
Thank
Put some loose ends together. I didn't quite understand all this
Thank you.
stuff.
Very nice, yeah.
Perfectly honest.
Okay, well, with that, I'll kick it back to Terry, but that is the end of the agenda that as prepared and what to look forward to at the next meeting, which is usually the last thing that I do. And so that's what I've got for you tonight.
Yeah.
Real quick,
Thank you.
what are the meeting what are the meeting dates in May?
The
Because May 1st
3rd,
is, May 1st is the first Wednesday.
is it the first, did I just say the dates all wrong?
Yeah, you said the 3rd, which is a Friday, that's why I just
Oh,
wanted to confirm.
it's 4/3 today, it's May 1st, you are correct, I apologize,
May 1st is the
I did misstate that.
No problem, I just.
Yeah, it is on Wednesday, I'm not calling anybody in on a Friday at 6:30.
Double time, we get double time, we get second shift day.
Yeah.
The moratorium ends on Cinco de Mayo.
Yes.
All right.
So our next meeting isn't 5/3, it is 5/1.
I would make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
3rd, 4th, 5th.
Thank you. That was good.
Paula.
Good.
Thank you.